Hola, hola.
Hola, Vicky.
¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien, ¿y tú?
Sí, muy bien.
Great.
I just wanted to say to you, first of all, thanks for agreeing to do this podcast.
More than helpful.
And this is my first one. So for any of you watching out there, this is my first podcast, and Jane very kindly volunteered to help me out with it. So we're going to have a little interview today about Jane's experiences in Spain and with learning Spanish, and maybe you'll find it useful for your experiences or for learning Spanish. So, okay, so tell everybody where you live, Jane. Where do you live?
En español. Sí.
Oh, no, not in Spanish.
Vivo en Callosa de Segura. No, not in Spanish. Okay, in English.
Yes, in English. Yeah, no, it's in English, not in. Oh no, wouldn't
Fine.
to you. That's too
Oh,
scary.
it's okay.
Perhaps.
That's okay. I can speak in English or Spanish.
I know you can. Jane speaks very good
okay.
Spanish, but.
Okay. I live in Callosa de Segura, which is a town near Orihuela in the community of Valencia.
Okay, and obviously you're not from there. Where do you actually come from?
I was born in England, so I'm British, English, but for a long time I lived in the north of Wales, in North Wales.
Okay, but you weren't born in Wales?
No, I was born on the south coast of England.
Okay. And how long have you lived in Spain? Because you do live here, you're not just on holiday here. So how long have you actually lived here?
We've been here a few years now, must be getting on for about 5, but we do spend a lot of time in the UK as well, because my husband still works there. But we've had the house a long time, probably getting on for about 14 years or so.
So it was a holiday home before you finally took the plunge and came out here.
Yeah.
And what made you decide to finally come and live here rather than just holiday here?
All sorts of reasons. My husband is Spanish, so he had been living in Great Britain for a long time. So it seemed only fair that, given change in circumstances, that we lived in Europe for a little bit. And then obviously you just look out of the window and you can see the lovely weather and the culture and the food and the beaches. There are 101 reasons why it's a lovely place to live.
There are, and actually I'm going to ask you some of those things. So what do you think are the positives of living in Spain?
For someone who's not Spanish, I do think it's a lovely opportunity, if you get one, to live in a different country, because you can change your perspective on life, and you get to experience a different culture, a different way of life. Although, you know, Spain is European and therefore not a million miles away from the UK, they do things differently here, and that's quite refreshing.
That's right. It's nice to go somewhere that's got a different culture, but it's not too far from home. You know, when home is still the UK in the beginning, when you first come out, or wherever you're here from. I mean, obviously we've got a lot of people living here from all over Europe. So
very much so.
But I think one of the reasons why Spain will always be popular with European people, and especially with British people, is the fact it's so close to home. As well as the weather, of course, but you know, not having to go too far for that weather and for that difference in culture.
Absolutely. And I think that to be able to live in a different country, whether it's permanently or for long periods of time, you know, broadens your mind and gives you a renewed appreciation of your own country as well as the new country that you're experiencing. It's good for us.
It is.
That's certainly what I've found. Anyway.
I agree. I totally agree. And do you think there are any negatives? What negatives might be about living in Spain?
I think some people find the heat of the summer very excessive. And I know particularly as one gets older, sometimes that can be a bit difficult, but you have to manage it like the Spaniards do. I'm
Well, exactly.
speaking to
That's
you.
it. I think for, you know, for any age, it's,
Mm,
you know, at the end of the day, the summer, especially, it depends what you're doing. Because if you have to work through it,
mm,
that's what you have to bear in mind. I mean,
yes,
it's different if you're when people are out on holiday or,
of course.
you know, that's different if you have to work through
Mm,
it. I mean, I don't know that some of the Spanish people do it, like the builders and things
mm,
like that. It's
mm.
really
It's
punishing,
very, yeah,
isn't
it
it?
is. It's
But
very excessive.
of course, it was you that this year told me about the mini pools, like for the
Mm.
terraces. And I can't believe I've lived here for all these years and never had
Never
one
done it.
before. It's fantastic. Yeah, so that's what I would recommend anyone. If you don't
Absolutely.
have a pool, and you were wondering how to cope with the hot summer months, definitely get a mini pool
Mm.
to put on your terrace
Yeah.
or your solariums. It makes a massive difference.
I
Yeah.
remember the first summer we had here thinking, I have to be near water.
Yeah.
And that, I don't mean necessarily the beach, but somehow to be able to cool down. And it does make a massive difference
It
if you
makes
have
a
a
massive
pool or a
difference.
little
That's
pool.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Access
heat,
to
at the end
water.
of the day, you just have to manage it. Like you have to manage the
Mm,
cold if you're in the
mm,
UK
of course.
and you've got to get through bitter winters. You manage
Yeah.
it, don't you? So you, as you
Absolutely.
say, watch what the Spanish do, learn
Mm,
from what they do.
yes.
Don't try and
Yes.
go jogging at 2 o'clock in the afternoon,
No,
which I quite often see British people out doing things like that. And I think, oh my
you can't
God,
do it.
no, you
You just
can't do
can't do
it.
it.
No, it's not good for you. But
No.
anyway, so any other negatives, or is it just the heat?
I don't think there are, Vicky, to be honest. I know people say that they miss, sometimes people say, oh, well, I miss British food or British this or British that. But if you live in an area where there is an established British community, you can usually find those sorts of things.
Exactly.
Anyway,
I mean, I think in the area
so,
we're in, if you want a British, if you want pie and chips, you can find pie and
oh,
chips,
yes,
or an English
absolutely,
breakfast,
you can.
or you can go for a lovely menu del dia, which is much nicer. But anyway, yeah, sometimes every now and again you get a little
Of course.
craving for something, I suppose.
And of course, people you miss as well. I mean, that's the obvious
That's right. You miss
comment.
your family.
Yeah. But you get lots of visitors. People come and stay with you.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, so how long have you actually studied Spanish, Jane?
Off and on for quite a long time. I did a GCSE Spanish years ago, and did the exam, which was quite traumatizing when you're 40 or whatever I was. And then since we've been here more frequently now for longer periods, I've picked up Spanish with you, which has been just fantastic, because it's all I want to do is to be able to communicate, really. I realise that I won't work in Spain or do anything official, but I want to be able.
Oops, I think you've frozen. Hello, are you still there? Oh, right, I think we might have lost Jane, but I'm hoping she might come back. Let's see. Okay, I think we should be back. We just had a few little blips there, a little bit
No problem.
of a few gremlins. Now, what was it? Oh, that's right, because you were saying that you wanted to be able to communicate, etc. Because of course, although your husband Lirio is Spanish, you don't speak in Spanish, do you? You met speaking in English.
That's right.
You met in England or in Wales, and
yes.
So you don't get a chance to practice with him, but now you've got some friends that you practice with, haven't you?
And I think that's made a massive difference, really, in the last couple of years. Being able to establish contact with some Spanish who want to learn English as well, so it works really well.
Yes.
Because perhaps we'll talk for an hour, we'll have half in Spanish, half in English, so we're helping each other.
Yeah. So just fill anybody in who's watching, like Jane has been coming to the conversation class, where in the days before lockdown, when we could do normal classes, Jane came to the conversation class and is now doing Zoom classes, where really we just speak in Spanish all the time, don't we? And then you do some grammar exercises for homework and things like that to brush up on her
Absolutely.
grammar. So,
Yes.
but Jane does speak in Spanish all the time in class. So she's done really well, actually, though she never thinks she has.
Well, that's good of you to say.
And in which situations do you think that you need Spanish the most?
Well, when I compare occasions where I couldn't really say much, bar buenos dias or something like that, and now when I can, it's the simple everyday events that I enjoy the most. So, you know, someone comes for a delivery, I can say hello, what is it? I understand if they need a signature, or, you know, some other fairly minor fact or whatever. It just makes it so much easier.
Just makes life so much easier.
Oh yes.
I
And
think when you learn Spanish, you forget, because sometimes I forget. Like students who've not been here very long might ask me, "Oh, do you know what self-raising flour is in Spanish?" Or do you, and I'd forgotten what it's like to look. Everything's an ordeal to find things.
Absolutely.
Like you're looking for a particular shampoo that because you've got dry hair, or you know, and having to sort of just everything you have to read through it, get your dictionary out, or you know, look up the words before you go. And I think as time goes on, you sort of you forget about that, and you sort of take it for granted. You know, just.
I was going to say, it's very interesting you should say that, because when we first started coming here, obviously I have a Spanish speaking husband, but I remember going into a shop and thinking, I am mute and illiterate. I can't say anything and I can't read anything. You know, I pick a product off a shelf and try and read what it is, particularly if there wasn't a very good picture or something like that. And I thought, this is terrible. There's no way that I can survive with
you know, and
having some sort of basic knowledge of the language.
Exactly. I think
certainly in the longer
what
term.
struck me. And if you're a bit nosy like me and you want to know what people are saying, you don't always want an interpreter.
Of course.
You know, it's
absolutely.
It's all those things that personally I could not live here without being able to speak Spanish. I know you can live in an enclave where everybody speaks English, but I don't really see the point in that. But anyway, that's each to their own. But what do you think is the most difficult thing about learning Spanish, or unenjoyable thing that you've had to do with Spanish?
The most obvious thing that is difficult, I think, and you and I've talked about this, and I know other people have said the same thing. The Spanish verbs are tricky. But I think the other thing is that it can be frustrating, and it's very easy to give up. It's not going to happen overnight. It does come bit by bit, and you can get demoralized.
It's a massive thing. Learning a language, I think that's true. We have to be kind to ourselves and realize that it takes a long time to learn a language.
Absolutely.
And we will have good days and bad days, just like everything else. Whatever you do, some days it all seems clear, and then other days you think, oh my goodness, I'm not getting anywhere. But perseverance, I suppose, is true of most learning anything, really, isn't it? But especially a language, it is a big thing to learn a language.
And just taking one step at a time, I think.
And what is the most enjoyable? So that the verbs are the least enjoyable. What's the most enjoyable thing?
I think the thing that I like, and you'll probably smile when I say this, but there are so many words that are similar in Spanish to English. There's sometimes if I just try and make it up.
Flag it,
But yes. But
sometimes it works. Sometimes it does work. You know, sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does.
You can, I was going to say, Spanify an English word, like like situation becomes situation,
Yeah.
opportunity, oportunidad, you know, little
That's
things
right.
like
It's
that.
always worth a try, and then if you see if
Yeah.
you're still getting a blank look, you've got to think again. But
Yes, but
you know,
sometimes, yeah.
at the end of the day, you're never probably going to know every single word in Spanish. So
No.
you have to find a way around it, either by
Mm.
trying a word that you think might be right. Sometimes I think eventually you get a bit of an instinct for words.
Of course.
And if you can't find the right word, what I always say is then you get to a point where you know enough Spanish to talk around it.
Absolutely.
So if you can't find the exact word what you want to say, or you don't know it, if you describe the thing,
yes,
then they will come up with the word, because if your description's good enough. So there's always a way around it. I think the trick is not to panic. That's the worst thing.
absolutely. Yeah, it's
panic,
fine.
and when you panic, you can't speak any language.
No.
So
True.
you just got to try and stay calm. And what advice would you give to someone who's trying to learn Spanish?
I think there are a few things that perhaps I've already mentioned as well. Be patient, you know, just take it one bit at a time. The friends I've mentioned, that's been a real advantage and a pleasure for me, because if you take it outside a classroom, you can see the value of it. And I've got two lovely Spanish friends whose company I enjoy. And if we didn't have that connection, we didn't have that language, I'd be missing out on that. And practice, obviously, because a language is a living thing and you have to practice it.
That's right. As much practice as possible. You can't
as much as you can
underestimate how much practice you need, really. So what have you particularly, maybe it's a bit of a difficult question, but I know you've sort of, like you say, you think that you've come on by using my method or whatever. What do you think particularly, how can I put it, what particularly do you think you found useful about the way the method works? Because you're now going through the grammar in the book.
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, the books are brilliant. I think that I'm somebody who likes to be taken through the stages rather than right, well, let's talk about so and so, and make it a rather haphazard way of learning. I like the stage learning that the books give you, the structure that the books give you.
Structure is important, isn't it?
It is. You know where you are and you can see progress.
Way. You always need some structure, I think. To learn it properly. I mean, you can learn a bit of this and a bit of that. Quite often people who ring me up about classes, they'll say, oh, I know a lot of words, but I don't know how to put them together. That's what you need to know, how to put them together. Because you can learn words. Anyone, you can sit and learn 5 words a day at home. You don't need classes for that. But what you need classes for is how to put those words together.
Absolutely.
That's why I think one thing that does work in my class is we make a lot of questions, because it's questions that keep a conversation going. If
Absolutely.
you can answer a question, but then it's like, oh, right, what do I do now? And you want to ask a question. And questions are perhaps the hardest things to put together. So I think hopefully that's what I think, and you sort of reaffirmed it, which is great. But I think structure is important.
Yes. And I think the other thing that you offer, Vicky, which has for me it's been very helpful, is there are different ways or different stages at which I can learn. I know, for instance, you offer intensive courses, semi-intensive, full immersion, and then the conversational classes, which until recently are the ones that I've chosen, so that any student who wants to learn Spanish can choose, if you like, the type of Spanish that you want to learn. I want the chat, I want to be able to talk, whereas other people might need more writing skills or whatever. So I think those options are valuable.
That's right. Well, one thing I have learned over the years of teaching is everybody's different.
And they've got different needs as well.
They've all got different needs. They all learn in different ways. Somebody can be very good at speaking and not very good at grammar, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Some people only remember things if they write them down. Other people have to hear them. So that is definitely one thing that I've learned. Everybody is different, which is why now we do the classes, the semi-intensive course and things like that. People work at their own speed. I don't try and keep a whole group all doing the same thing all together. And that works in the Zoom groups as well, you know.
Sure.
So they can be all different levels. They're all working at their own pace. Because one thing I learned quite a long time ago, but only stopped doing a couple of years ago, is even if you have a group of absolute beginners start on one day, and Jane will know this because Jane's was a teacher as well, so a teacher of English, weren't you, Jane?
I was, yeah.
And they all start on the same level on the same day, know absolutely nothing, and by the time 3 classes or even 1 class has gone by, one's gone right ahead like that, one's doesn't understand anything, one's sort of doing okay. Everybody learns at different rates, you know, and I've always said everyone can learn Spanish, anyone can learn Spanish, but not everybody will learn it as quickly as someone else. There'll always be somebody better, quicker, but then they might be quicker at one thing and you might be quicker, you know. So the important thing is not to look at what other people are doing. You're only in competition with yourself, and as long as you're improving, it doesn't matter if somebody else is further on in the book than you. You're where you are, and as long as you've learned that well, you know, you know, some people are just generally gifted with languages. Some people find languages very easy, which is something that happened to me that I didn't even know really, but it did. Whereas maths, if you put some numbers in front of me, I wouldn't have a clue. You know, it's just like a veil comes down. So, you know, you only have to mention numbers to me and I'm like, oh my goodness. So that's it. So I think it's important to understand that everyone's an individual. And I think that's worked really well in the classes since I started. You know, it just clicked one day. Somebody was taking a long time over things, and I thought, there's no point in trying to make him keep up with everybody else, because he's just going to get panicky and everybody else is going to get frustrated because he's holding them back. So just let him go at his own pace. And since then, I've always done that, and I think it's worked well with people's confidence as much as anything. Right, so I've got one more question for you. And I want you to tell me one thing, if you can think of just one thing, that you think is essential to live in Spain, that you can't do without for life in Spain.
That's a difficult question.
I know. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's like desert island discs.
Yeah, I suppose if I qualify the question a little bit, it depends on what angle you're coming at that question. Personally, I think it's been essential for me to have some sort of understanding of the country and the country's history. I think to really enjoy and get the most out of living in Spain, if you know a little bit about the history of the country, a little bit about not only is what perhaps happened in the last 100 years or so, but also what's happening now in Spain. That gives for a more fuller experience.
So many people don't know, you know, so many people that live here, they don't know who the president is. Or they don't, you know, they know nothing about the government. And really, I mean, some people who live in their own country, they don't know.
That's true.
You know, so, but I agree with you. I think these things are important because, you know, we have to understand what's going on in the country that we live in.
And I think there are so many wonderful fiestas and commemorations for things that if you've got some idea of where the the tradition of the Moors and the Christians, for instance, come from. Or,
That's right. There's a big history behind all these
absolutely.
fiestas. That's right. Yeah.
And the museums that are local to us in Alicante and Murcia and so on. If you've got some understanding of the history, you get an awful lot more out of.
That's right. It's a rich
those sorts of
history in
visits.
Spain. That's right.
Huge.
And it's funny you say that, because today I saw something that there was something that coming up that's being cancelled because of the COVID situation, and it was like a big military thing, and I thought, oh, I don't know anything about that. So it's a bit like don't know what the equivalent would be in the UK, but it's, you know, where they show off their military
like the trooping of the colour or something like that.
Yeah, but that's on a regular basis, that, isn't it, in the UK?
Yes.
This is seemed to be like a once a year thing. And I thought, and I haven't had time yet, but I thought I must find out more about this. I don't know anything about that. So it's been cancelled, and I thought it's been cancelled. I didn't even know it was going ahead, you know. So so there's a lot that we don't know about our country that we probably, the country we live in, which we probably should do. And these fiestas, they're all nice to go and see. Have you been to see the Moors and Christians?
Yes, several times. Yeah. But I think you just get more of them, more out of them, if you know a little bit about where they've come from.
Behind it.
And an appreciation too of what this country's been through and what it faces in the future and so on. It's a country like all countries, but full of history. It's amazing.
Yes,
so many lovely things to see as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Jane. Thanks for giving up some of your time to speak.
No, not a problem.
I will see you in our next class. But thank you very much anyway. And
you're welcome.
Have a good evening.
And you.
Tengas buena tarde. ¿Vale?
Muchas gracias. Adiós.
Adiós.